Hey David, good evening. This is Ryan with TrendLizard.com. I want to thank you for signing up at TrendLizard recently. Welcome to the community. I think you're going to like what we do. And as you figured out, I'm sure what we do is analyze anything that can be plotted on a price chart to determine where it is in its Elliott Wave pattern, which tells us where it's been and where it's going so that we can make informed investment and trading decisions. So you had sent me an email asking me to analyze three different stocks. It is Apple, AAPL, Amazon, AMZN, and Zillow, Z is its ticker. So we've looked at Apple just recently, just a couple weeks ago. I'm going to take another look at it for you since you requested it. We've looked at Amazon before. Zillow is new, but we will start from the top. Let's start with Apple here. Excuse me. It was incepted back in 1984, had a little bit of up and down action at the beginning. Things really got going at the start of 1998, got a very large first wave and then a second wave pullback. Since then, since the low in 2003, it's been in a very large third wave advance that is not yet complete. We may be getting closer, but that is where we are. Now, every time I post a video about Apple, I get comments, hey, Wave 3 can't be the shortest. Well, Wave 3 is not the shortest. If you look at Wave 1 here, it went from about 20 cents up to about $5. So you're talking about maybe a $4.8 point move. Wave 3 here went from about 250 up to 20, not even close. This is a logarithmic scale, so it looks like it may be smaller, but in terms of points, Wave 3 is substantially larger. So I assure you, please don't send any comments that say Wave 3 is the smallest. It is not. What we do see is a very clear and apparent five-wave form off of that 2003 low. So that's one five-wave move that we need to be aware of that could be completing sometime soon. Now let's go ahead and zoom in on just this action off of the 2013 low. That's this action here, and as you can see, it too sports a general five-wave form that we need to be aware of. A first, a second, a third, a fourth, potentially a fifth wave. Every one of those legs internally has taken on a five-wave form as it should. So we need to be aware of the possibility of very large degree patterns completing and giving us five-wave moves. That's something that we certainly have to be aware of. The question is, are we at an end to those moves, or we still have some more upside to go as things extend? So let's go ahead and zoom in again and just look at this action off the 2019 low. Here's another move that takes a general five-wave form. As you can see, a first, a second, a third, a fourth, and a fifth. Again, we're seeing a lot of potential five-wave patterns that could be completing. That said, what we're seeing so far from Apple does not suggest that a high is in yet. What we've seen is some back and forth price action off of that 2020 high. This looks like counter trend movement. This is not the start of any kind of new downtrend. So it makes us wonder if a high is actually in, or if instead we will continue to extend higher. So let's continue to drill in here and see what we can determine here. We'll take a closer look at what's happened off the 2020 high. Here's that move. It's not labeled at this point, but it just shows you the back and forth nature of the move. Clearly counter trend price action, and we know that with certainty because it set new highs along the way. So the real question is, how do we label this counter trend price action, and where does that put us in the larger term timeframes for Apple? So let's give it a shot, a couple different ways on how to label this guy. One possibility is that it's in a large running correction that's not yet over. We'd have an A wave down to the downside here that ended in November, this big drifty, not terribly impressive up move that fits as a B wave, and then a C wave down to complete this larger counter trend pullback. If at any point Apple moves below 132, this is going to look like the right fit. We're going to have to consider this to be an incomplete counter trend pullback and would expect it to move back towards this line, ideally back into the yellow area, but in this market environment, we're not seeing C waves go very deep. We're seeing them become pretty shallow. Regardless, a move below 132 would indicate that a larger counter trend pullback is forming. Now, I'm not quite convinced that it's going to happen. Let's take a look at another way that we can label this counter trend action that's played off of the 2020 low. This is more of what we've seen on different stocks. We've seen a lot of complex moves with truncated C waves where wave C does not move below wave A. You can see here this is an ABC with a truncated C wave, then an X, and then an ABC with another potential truncated C wave. Now the reason that I bring this possibility up is because of what's happened off of June's low. This is more trendy. This looks more bullish. This is giving more of the impression that something more important has begun to the upside again, and that this is just some counter trend muck. Again, if it moves below 132, that idea is out the window. But as long as it's trading above 132, it looks pretty constructive. Now let's go ahead and just zoom in on this price action here. This chart here, what we're seeing off of June's low is a nice trendy up move, and then we're getting some counter trend sideways price action here. This makes me feel like Apple has the intention to continue higher with the way it's behaving. Anytime we get this type of price action, especially in such a well-defined uptrend, we have to think higher prices are coming. So that is kind of the expectation. It's not yet clear if this counter trend pullback is over. It would make a lot more sense if we got to move back down to 142 before it took off to the upside. But again, in the current market environment, we're just not seeing a lot of deep corrections. We're seeing some pretty flat, choppy moves to the side. So here's what it boils down to for me. If it moves below 146 at any point in time, it's going to tell us that this pullback off of July's high is not yet over. It could move as low as this yellow support area here. I'd be surprised if it did. It would just tell us that we're getting a larger move that should head back towards the lows for the pullback. But either way, as long as it stays above 132, this guy looks bullish. It looks like it wants to head higher for me. The question that has to be asked then is, how is that possible if all these large 5-wave advances are completing? And I think this would be the answer here if we step back out to this up leg off of the 2019 low, which sported a general 5-wave form. I think we'd have to look at this and wonder if maybe we're getting more of an extended third wave here. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this would be the first and second wave, and then we're getting that 5-wave move for wave 3 that is yet to complete. At the end of the day, I think Apple looks bullish, largely based off of what we're seeing on the near-term time frame. We're seeing some of the same type of stuff on the overall market. It's a very extended move, but until something changes, it doesn't matter. Higher prices have to be expected. So again, boiled down to definable, tradable terms, as long as it's trading above 132. I know it says 133 here. Sorry, it's actually 132. As long as it's trading above that level, I think you have to expect higher prices based on this constructive action here. If we do move below 146, that tells us the correction is not yet over, and that higher prices will come after a larger correction forms on Apple, but remain bullish against 132. So there's Apple, nothing short about it, but let's go ahead and move on and take a look at Amazon now, AMZN. Haven't looked at this guy anytime recently. It's broken down recently. Definitely something worth looking at. It was incepted back in 1997, gave us a very large first wave, and then a equally impressive second wave pullback. Since that low was recorded in 2001, it's been in a massive move. Obviously, there have been pullbacks along the way, but overall, this looks like one gigantic third wave advance that apparently is not yet complete. But there are some things to look at as we drive in closer here. Let's go ahead and just zoom in on this 5-wave advance off of the 2001 low. Excuse me. Yep, we're taking a look at that advance. I think we pull up a little bit short here, but this shows you the details of that 5-wave move and why we've labeled it as we have. Now, the thing that we need to be aware of, similar with Apple, is that we are starting to see some 5-wave moves to the upside on very large term time frames that could complete. And once those complete, we have to expect a much larger counter trend pullback to emerge at that time and correct very large up moves. So when these up moves are completing, when these 5-wave moves complete, it has to be time to step aside and time to be more cautious, because if we have a setup for a correction that's going to last multiple years, clearly that's not something we want to sit through. That's something to keep in mind for the future, as is Amazon has remained bullish, and I'll show you as we drive in here. So let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit more. This just looks at the action basically since 2018. First this pullback and then the upside action there. You can see that's a counter trend pullback. It's a larger move. It fits as a 4th wave, so that means everything off of the 2020 low fits as a 5th wave advance, like it does on so many other places. On Amazon, it's given us off that 2020 low a very sharp, clear 5-wave advance into the, I think, September 2020 high. Since then, it's been back and forth. It did set a new high in 2021, but then kind of got smacked back from there. And it tells us what has happened here is that we're kind of in a running correction. We've seen so many running corrections in this market environment. This looks like another one, and there's a reason for us to believe that this is not anything more important, just part of a larger corrective pullback off of that 2020 high. So let's go ahead and zoom in, and I'll show you why. Here is a look at the correction off that September 2020 high. We have an A wave down, a B wave, and a C wave down here. This fits as wave A. Now, if we look at the advance that moved to a new high just recently in July, it couldn't be more clear. This is an ABC move. Now, this could not mark a high in any objective way. If it's a three-wave move, that's not how trends complete. The only way it fits in an objective fashion is if we label it as a B wave. Long story short, this is a very clear clue that tells us to consider the entire pullback off the 2020 high an A, B, and C wave down, an incomplete counter trend pullback that's not yet over. This means Amazon remains bullish overall, but we need to be concerned about the possibility of lower prices in the near term before it turns back up. So let's go ahead and zoom in. I just want to look at the price action off of July's high here to see what's going on. Here's what it is, that breakdown off of July's high. This was its earnings report, I believe, a pretty large gap down. This looks like trendy price action, and that's what we expect towards the end of a counter trend pullback. We should get an ending 5-wave decline for Wave C. Wave Cs are supposed to be 5-wave moves, so it should head lower. And again, if we step back out, it would make sense for Amazon to move back towards this kind of rising trend line here before it turns back up. So there's no good reason to think that this pullback is over on Amazon. It's very near its low for this down move off of July's high. All these things tell us there's no reason to consider a low in yet. If it were to pop up, then we would be interested, but it would expect lower levels first before Amazon turns up. We want to see some type of trendy upside price movement before we get excited about this guy. Once we start seeing some trendy 5-wave moves to the upside on a small time frame, then it would look like a buying opportunity. Again, let's step back out here. Actually, one more. You have this nice trendy 5-wave move and then a counter trend pullback. That's a setup for higher prices once the counter trend pullback completes. So that's what we're looking at. Got to look for near-term weakness, but once we get it, we're going to be on guard for a resumption of the uptrend and some trendy upside price movement, which we will buy. If it ever moves up above 35.80, that would be a bullish sign. I would not expect that you need to wait that long before you buy it. Again, I'd like to see some trendy upside price movement on a short-term time frame to get involved with Amazon. So there is that guy. Let's go ahead and move on to Zillow now, ticker Z. It has not been around as long as the other guys. It was incepted in 2015. Had a little pullback and then gave us some trendy upside action. It looks to me like the end of a larger trendy price move. That might be confusing, but bottom line, just because the stock IPO'd right here doesn't mean this was the start of its all-time Elliott Wave pattern. Kind of dropping in on an Elliott Wave pattern when the IPO happens. To me, it looks like the end of a trendy 5-wave move. We just don't see the first part of it. More importantly, from there, since the 2018 high, a very clear ABC pullback. It was very damaging. Took it from about 65 down to 20. Big deal. Obviously, it got crushed in the COVID crash. Once it recorded that low in March of 2020, it shot up to the upside, went from 20 to 210, and in 2021, it had second thoughts and has given a very large portion of that back, currently trading at 96, so more than a 50% decline off of that 2021 high. Very clear. This up leg is a 5-wave move that is very obviously completed. Since then, price is going lower. We need to zoom in and see what's going on here to see if a low is imminent here. So let's go ahead and zoom in on the action off of the 2020 low. Here's that 5-wave move, a very nice 5-wave move. No question that it's over based on the size of this counter trend pullback, but we can label it and come to that same conclusion. So on this time frame, what we see a nice 5-wave move that has been retraced by nearly 61.8%. As it moves down to 91, 92, that's going to represent a 61.8% retracement of this entire up leg. We don't want to see it move much below that. When it moves much below that, it becomes hard to remain bullish on any larger time frame because any healthy trend generally is not retraced by more than 61.8% by a correction. So if it moves below that, I'd be out on the Zillow game until something changes in a major way. If it can find support between here and 92 and start turning higher, this looks like a buying opportunity. Similar to Amazon, you want to see some trendy 5-wave price action on a small time frame to indicate that something has changed and that this is becoming a worthy buying opportunity. Now it's trading around 96. This level is way too far away, but if it moves above 165 at any point, that makes this large, massive counter trend move a counter trend move. It makes this large pullback a counter trend move. Again, you can't really wait for that. We want to see some trendy price action. For now, let's go ahead and zoom in on the 2021 pullback and see what it tells us. So far, what we've seen, and it's pretty hard to label it overall just because it's not super clear yet, but what we have seen, trendy down leg, counter trend recovery, trendy down leg, counter trend recovery, and now another breakdown. So overall, again, it's hard to label. Could be a counter trend move. If it starts popping up anytime soon, this will generally look like a counter trend move. But so far, every down leg's been trendy. Every bounce effort has been a counter trend recovery. There is no sign of a low to this 2021 pullback. Again, it needs to find a low fairly soon if this is in fact just a correction of that big 2020 up leg. It needs to find support somewhere above, 92. 91, 92 in that area. If it continues much through there, again, I wouldn't be interested in Zillow. But if it can find support, begin to turn higher, and give us some trendy upside action, Zillow would be a buy. I just wouldn't recommend it directly from here. So I hope that's helpful. Again, thanks for becoming a member of TrendLizard.com. Let me know if you have any questions about this stuff or anything else. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you again very soon. Take care.